Hi, beautiful chosen ones. The truth doesn't set you free until it tears down everything that was built on the lie. We're not going to sugarcoat anything today, so take a minute to think about it. We're going to speak about the bare, unedited truths that most people don't want to hear. And the chosen ones, like you, had to eat it without any warning. This isn't one of those things that makes you feel great. Just trust the process. Talks about pep. No. This is the kind of truth that makes you feel wonderful. Your ego starts to sweat, and your soul starts to speak. Someone finally said it. A lot of individuals don't know this. Neuroscience has shown that the brain reacts to the truth in the same way that it reacts to pain. That's why people become afraid when you say things that undermine the illusion. That's why they couldn't handle you. You didn't change. You stopped being dumb, and now you're behaving in a new way. You're too much. You're the problem now. You just made your spirit better while they were still loading. So be ready, because what we're about to speak about is really vital, but also ugly and uncomfortable. This isn't a TED Talk. It's a spiritual act. Don't worry, I'll add just the proper amount of humor to keep your third eye from twitching too much. Let's get going. The truth is coming, and it doesn't require makeup. First of all, they don't hate you. They don't like that you didn't give in when they would have. They don't hate you because you did anything wrong. They hate you because you didn't give up when they would have. You got up when it didn't make sense to do so. They thought they would see a broken down version of you, yet you came there with strength in your eyes. That's what makes each one of them different. It's not that you were lucky, it's that you were formed differently, and they know it. People don't say this out loud very frequently, but most people want you to win. When they play savior, they may change your story, or at the absolutely stay ahead of you. But you get up without their permission, grow well without their help, and win without them even knowing how. That's when their fake smiles start to change. They become upset because you didn't break down as they imagined you would. Many people assumed you would fail. Some folks even made preparations for it. They smiled at you and thought about all the things that were wrong with you. Like weapons, they held your secrets. But they didn't think about how strong you are within. Your ability to handle betrayal, embarrassment, and loneliness without becoming angry or hurt. That kind of survival changes who they are because it forces them to face the fact that they gave up too soon in their own lives. They'd rather label you crazy, arrogant, or too deep than admit that watching you bloom from the ashes demonstrates how little they're doing with their own pain. You didn't just live, you transformed. And change is harmful for those who want to stay where they are. The hardest thing for them is that you didn't just leave. You came back stronger, calmer, and wiser, and you didn't need applause to feel good about yourself. They don't hate you because you're doing well. They hate you because your tranquility makes their problems plain. Your strength reveals how much they want to stay away from you. Your ascension appears like an assault on their comfort zone. And this is the finest part. They would probably like you more if you had sold your soul to obtain it. But you didn't. You were truthful. That is the thing that terrifies them the most. 2. You are proof that bloodlines can be altered. And it makes everyone in your family scared. You're not only becoming better for your own sake. You're fixing things for people who have been dead for a long time, and for people who haven't even been born yet. That's the sad reality. No one says it out loud. You were coming to your family not only to make it, but also to disrupt patterns that have been going on for decades or even centuries. You were the only one who saw something was amiss and said, "Something's not right here." Everyone else pretended like nothing was wrong. That's why you were always the odd one out, the one who got criticized, and the one who was too sensitive. You were the first to speak up against the bad things that were labeled tradition. You were the one who couldn't sit quiet when things weren't going well. Because of that, they made you feel like you were the problem. But the truth is that they were terrified of something about you. They knew you were supposed to halt the pattern. You were the walking threat to generational denial. This is what really hurts. The people you're trying to help by fixing things are the ones who fight you the hardest. They do care, but not enough. It's because your alteration goes against the story that makes up who they are. If you become better, they have to admit that it's possible to get better if you ascend. They have to admit that they settled. And most people would sooner hit you than gaze in the mirror. You're not only altering your life, you're pushing a bloodline forward. Every line you draw, every lie you utter, and every emotional wound you choose to heal, It causes ripples in everything. Your courage is shattering curses that have been in your family for longer than your name. And let's be honest, that job is exhausting. It hurts and it's lonely, but it's also great. You didn't just come here to live. You came here to start again. Your ancestors wanted a hard reset button like you, even if they never lived long enough to say so. And even if no one claps for you today, your hard work will make it possible for future generations to live more freely. That's what you leave behind. And they can't stop it, no matter how hard they try. Third, they took advantage of your innocence because they felt it was dumb. They didn't come for you because you were weak. They came for you because you were pure. And in a world that loves to deceive people, people think that being pure is terrible, not beneficial. You weren't dumb. You just gave them a chance to show you who they really were. And when they showed you, you didn't become angry. You saw. You kept track of things in your head. You didn't say anything. That was what worried them the most. You didn't answer the way they expected you to. You didn't scream, fight, or go crazy. Someone is keeping an eye on you. And your silence said volumes. They thought you were easy to deal with since you were kind. They assumed that your capacity to care for others made you blind. They believed they were better off since you weren't cheating. This is the truth, however. You saw it everything. You witnessed all the passive-aggressive jabs, fake support, and chatter behind your back that truly worried you. You choose not to respond with the same level of passion. That made them believe you were a threat. They didn't understand that your silence was never a sign of weakness. It was a good idea. You were thinking about how much it would cost to react and how much it would cost to stay quiet. That's when they felt guilty, when they learned you had known all along. That's when the lies had to become stronger. They had to adjust the tale to protect themselves from the disgrace of being found out. Since no one wants to admit they tried to fool someone who already knew what was going on. There was no drama when you finally departed. It was over. They felt it was punishment, nevertheless. Not because you hurt them, but because you took away something real, something rare, and something they now know they can't get back. So what did they do? Tried to modify the story. Tried to act like you weren't real. Too sensitive, overreacting. But they realized what they had done deep inside. And a lot more they know you knew. The truth is that they didn't murder you. They messed up their own chances with someone who merely wanted to assist. And now that you're not talking, it's the loudest proof of all. You got over their lies without saying anything. You were their final chance, and they blew it big time. You were more than just a friend, brother, partner, or support system. Someone's journey was made better by your presence. A last test to see whether they were ready to grow, evolve, and go on to the next step in their own path. And what did they do with that opportunity? They failed not just once, but many times, and they did it in a manner that was loud, public, and arrogant, which still haunts them. You came to me with open hands and an open heart, and you spoke to me like you were smart. You were patient with them when they wanted some time alone. Even when they offered you reasons to depart, you were kind to them. You gave them a safe place to be themselves, heal, and ponder. But they behaved like they didn't care about you since they couldn't see you at the time. They thought of you as just another person, another emotional crutch, or another decent person they could exploit, manipulate, or ignore. But they didn't notice it. You were the final sign from heaven. Not punishment or revenge. A chance. One more chance to stop doing awful things. Own up to what they've done and treat someone with the respect they thought they wanted. You were the test that might have transformed their life for the better. You were the way they could change. They didn't go through with it. Instead, they hit themselves in the face with it. Now, the same patterns they wouldn't break are killing them. The tactics that used to work don't work anymore. The people they chose instead of you have now turned against them. They can't use the elevator. They don't feel good. And they can't stop thinking about you like a movie that keeps playing. They can't stop. Not because they feel bad, but because they learned something. The fact that you were the real thing, and they botched up. This is what happens when someone fails their heavenly test. Life doesn't just keep going. It alters the entire story. And in this new shape, you are no longer the lesson they are. Fifth, people don't stop talking to you just because you did something wrong. They go away because your light is too accurate. People don't talk about the real reason too frequently. They stay away from you. It's not because you were too emotional, toxic, or demanding. That's just what they say to feel better about themselves. The truth. Your excitement was too genuine, too honest, and too on point. What you stated didn't reveal them. You exposed them just by being there. You were like a mirror that revealed them parts of themselves they had been trying to hide. People don't lean in when they perceive so much spiritual accuracy. They run. They didn't stop talking to you because of what you did. Because of what you showed them, they ghosted you. You forced them to confront things they've been hiding from you for years with charm, performance, and superficial bonds. They couldn't pretend that they couldn't modify the story. Your presence sliced straight through the facade they were attempting to put up. That was terrifying. Some people want to connect with others so much that they would lie, until it helps them develop. They say they want love, healing, and depth. But when they meet someone who genuinely shows those attributes, it's too much. Because they are being pushed, not spoiled. People are gazing at them, but they're not having fun. So they leave. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you were too much for them. They didn't feel safe with you emotionally. You didn't make it easy for them to keep lying. You didn't act little to make them feel protected. You came in fully, honestly, and without saying sorry. And that was enough to make them go on their own. The truth is that they weren't scared of your life because it was too bright. They were scared because it was so real. You didn't judge them. You only reminded them of what they hadn't gotten over. And some people would rather not deal with that level of truth than confront it. So don't let their silence get to you. It's not a no. It's avoiding spirituality. You were never too much. You were just too real. Number 6, you're not too much. They just can't get enough of shallow stuff. People have probably told you that you are too deep, emotional, theatrical, or passionate, as if it's a flaw in your character. But their names didn't actually mean anything to you. They were for them. They weren't ready for what you had. You weren't just another superficial romance. They knew it immediately away. You didn't reside in the shallow end, where folks spoke about nothing and smiled fake smiles. You came with depth, presence, and an intensity that made people confront what they had been avoiding. They say they want real things, but what they really want is something that will keep me engaged but not push me. They like the idea of depth until it makes them think about things they don't want to speak about. You didn't just speak what was true, you lived it. And those who are used to shallow, superficial environments don't know how to handle it. They need noise, diversions, and emotional distance to live. You, on the other hand, walk in quietly with something that makes them feel horrible. You weren't too much. You were too correct to be aware. You heard what they didn't say. You saw what they were attempting to hide. You could see the pain behind the display. And people don't want to be seen unless they can alter the lighting. They didn't leave because you were too much for them. They ran away because you were too full. And those who are still running on empty don't grasp it. Your emotional intelligence wasn't intimidating because it was loud. It was terrifying because it was real. You asked them questions they didn't want to answer because you cared about them so much. You came into a world that loves to keep things apart and made individuals real. And that's not something most people are ready to do. So when they believe you're too much, make sure you translate it correctly. What they really mean is that they aren't ready for this level of honesty, depth, or connection. And that's okay because someone else isn't ready for it yet. They have been searching for it. You weren't designed to be simple to understand. You were created to be remembered. While others choke on the shallow, you keep going deeper. Number 7, your growth turned them to become liars without you saying a word. They thought you were insane when you had dreams they couldn't see. When you dared to heal out loud, many warned you you were unstable. They'll laugh at you behind your back. People made fun of you in areas you never visited because your progress made them feel bad before it was obvious. But the most insane part was that you didn't say anything. You didn't fight back. You simply become different. That was how you got back at them. They stopped talking because everything they said about you is suddenly crumbling apart in front of their eyes. You didn't ask for evidence. You became it. You didn't have to inform anybody about how you changed. Your life started to scream it. And now the people who were so convinced they knew you are racing to modify their tale, hoping no one remembers how loud they were when they declared you'd never amount to anything. They're not only embarrassed, they're also out in the open. And you didn't have to pay back your promotion. It came with elegance when they were in the middle of a fight. They were telling people you were lost, but you were doing the hard work. You were learning things about yourself that other people were too terrified to see. And now you're here, loud, steady, and focused. And the same folks who said you were broken are suddenly quiet. You didn't have to prove them wrong. Life did it for you. Now they're hiding from the truth that looks like you. Because your success didn't only make them seem foolish. It made them seem fake. It showed how rapidly they would speak about something they didn't understand. It revealed how easy it was for them to go back on their word. They lied because you grew, and you didn't have to say a word. That's why they don't feel well. That's why they can't make eye contact with you. Not because they still think you're wrong, but because they know you were right. And deep down, they know that if they had treated you better, they might have been in the story they are now trying to get rid of. But they didn't notice it. And it disturbs them more than anything else you could say. And number 8, you're not only hard to love. People need to learn to love you. It's not hard to love you. You just won't allow other people feel big by being smaller. You don't pretend dumb or beg for crumbs to keep the peace. You love completely without fear and with a certain kind of clarity. That alone makes most people unqualified. Not because you're impossible, but because you show them how much work they still have to do. You don't require a lot of care since you were never meant to be cared for. People were meant to meet you where you were with honesty, purpose, and presence. Many people say they want a deep connection, but what they truly want is proximity that is simple to achieve. They want someone who is weak enough to soothe them, but not strong enough to fight back. But that's not how you do your job. You don't have to be perfect. You need to be responsible. You don't need someone to tell you how great you are. You need someone who will be honest with you. Someone who is spiritually aware enough to understand your energy and emotionally fluent enough to understand your silence. That's not normal. You don't want someone to make you complete. You are already whole. But that kind of richness worries those who still require chaos to feel alive. You worked hard to face your worries. Give your wounds a name and utilize your pain to benefit other people. You don't believe the lies or the love bombing. You wait. You look. It's up to you. And that kind of patience makes you untouchable. For those who still let their emotions control them, loving you makes me better. To love you is to cease playing the ego's games and be really honest. It's not about being sure all the time. It's about maturing as a group. Most individuals aren't used to it. They believe that being tranquil is dull and being deep is hard. But you were never supposed to be humorous. You were sent to elevate up. So, no, you're not hard to love. You are just not easy to use incorrectly. People who can see you clearly will see that your standards aren't barriers. They don't keep love out. They keep distortion out. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for something real. And if they can't meet you there, that's not your fault. It's their limitation. 9. You're being punished for the role they gave you in their fantasy. You're not being punished for who you are. You're being punished for who they thought you would always be. In their minds, they built a version of you that made them feel powerful, in command, and at ease. Maybe at first you played that part, silently absorbing contempt instead of delivering it, staying tiny and swallowing pain to preserve the peace. And they got used to it. They built their name on how well you worked with them. They wanted you to be calm, committed, kind, and even sad. It took care of them. It helped them avoid themselves. But something happened. You started to wake up. You started to ask questions, set limits, and get back parts of yourself that you had buried to make them feel better. You stopped taking care of their problems, and all of a sudden you weren't doing your job anymore. That was when the attack started. Not because you were incorrect, but because you didn't stay in character. They weren't ready for the you that was healed. The one that said no. The one that stopped trying to justify itself. The one who didn't flinch when they took away your permission or tried to make you feel bad. That version messed up their imagination. And instead of growing with you, they turned against you. They told other people you were different, that you lied to them. But what they really meant was you stopped being the person I wanted you to be to make me feel better. They turned your revolution into a matter of their own pride. They didn't care if you got well. They were afraid that it would make the character you were playing less fun. They had to either make you the bad guy or make you stronger as soon as you spoke up for yourself. And most of them chose the simpler path. They lied, attacked, ghosted, or gossiped, yet they know the truth deep within. You didn't let them down. You just stopped betraying yourself. You didn't cut off the link. They broke the illusion and made you pay for it. Let them talk. Let them be mad. Let them act like victims of a story they made up to avoid taking responsibility. Because one day they'll realize that you weren't a part of their story. You were a fully developed soul that merely outgrew the script and didn't want to shrink. That was your big break, not their betrayal. Number 2 in your presence was a door, but they treated it like a playground. You weren't just another connection, friend, or person moving through life. You were a door. The opportunity to change, to become bigger, to end cycles. They didn't even know they were stuck. You came into their lives for a reason, not to control them or save them, but to bring something ancient and buried within them back to life. A better version of yourself that only few people can find. But instead of seeing how special you were, they acted like you were a game. They thought they were smarter than you, that you were too naive to see the manipulation, the gaslighting, the half-truths, and the double standards. They thought your grace made you easy to fool. They thought you were confused because you were silent. But here's the truth. You saw it everything. And yet you gave them the benefit of the doubt. Not because you couldn't see, but because you thought the real them would come to meet you. They couldn't handle that much responsibility or that much consideration. It was easier to play than to adapt. It's easier to project than to look within yourself. So they chose the playground instead of the doorway. They made fun of things they didn't understand. They took advantage of your energy. And now they're stuck doing the same bad things with different people again and over. Chasing highs that don't last long. Looking for meaning in empty spaces. Because the one person who could help them get well doesn't answer the door anymore. You can't get in. Not out of anger, but because things aren't right. You can't keep giving them the divine if they think it's trash. You can't keep giving people insights in places where they just want to have fun. The truth is that they were never ready for what you brought. That's okay. But what's not right is that they tried to downplay it while covertly depending on it. Now they're finding out that what they thought were just vibrations were really visions. What they thought was just being there was power. They thought they were just getting attention, but they were really getting an assignment. They interfered with what was sacred and lost the ability to change. That's not your loss. That's the delay in the spirit. A lot of them. You didn't go crazy. You grew out of their little world. They said you were going crazy. They spoke about how strange you looked. They made fun of your insides, rolled their eyes at your views, and called your sensitivity a sign of weakness or instability. But they couldn't see it then, and they still can't see it now. You didn't go crazy. You made it bigger. You didn't lose touch with reality. You cut yourself off from their world. A world built on lies, distractions, fake people, and shallow connections. You outgrew the simulation as soon as you started to see through fake smiles, feel energy shifts, and understand the spiritual meaning behind what individuals spoke. They became nervous. You didn't only hear people anymore. You could feel them. You didn't just watch what others did. You knew what was going on. You started to shop for denial, to wake up from being manipulated, and to those who were still asleep. It feels ridiculous to be that alert. But let's be clear. It wasn't a mental illness. It was what people thought. You started to see patterns that they couldn't explain. You knew things you weren't supposed to know. You'd meet them and soon feel the chaos they hadn't spoken about. You could feel the spiritual struggle in the air before anybody said anything when you walked into a room. That's not crazy. That's being able to tell the difference between good and bad. That's the kind of gift that makes you see everything. People who are on the surface build their identities on, and they made fun of it because they couldn't get to it and couldn't control it. They turned it down. They chose the simple argument that you're crazy. It made it easier for them to sleep at night. It gave them a false sense of dominance over something they wanted but didn't understand. But their denial doesn't change the facts. You were just a little ahead. You left the little box. They try to keep you inside. You left the matrix. You stopped acting like you didn't see. You become sensitive to things that others still don't feel. Instead of asking how you got there, they just ignored you. But they know they felt it deep inside. Their lips may not have spoken it, but their spirit knew that your frequency had changed. So, no, you didn't go crazy. You just stopped living in the one they wanted to keep you in. And it would always seem absurd to the people who were limited. Your limits were an insult to the way they were trying to control you. You weren't being mean when you set restrictions. You were clear. You didn't stop talking because you were uncaring. You were smart. But to the people who lived on your confusion, shame, and overworking, your clarity seemed like an insult. They didn't love you because you were independent. They loved you for your access. And when that access came with strings attached, their true colors showed out. They were out in the open. They weren't used to you saying no without giving them a short reason. They were used to pulling your strings with guilt, silence, or aggression that wasn't too obvious. They played with your sympathies. They might use your loyalty against you. And as long as you were trying to keep the peace, they were in charge. But as soon as you started to trust your own judgment and saw your own flaws, they freaked out. Not because you were mean to them, but because you stopped being available for them to use. You weren't being dramatic. You were protecting your peace. But they made you feel like you were selfish, untrustworthy, and even toxic. That's how manipulators act. In their world, crossing your boundaries is a betrayal. Therefore, they change the script. Your silence is a threat. Your refusal to accept dysfunction is a sign that you are growing. They don't want you back. They miss the you who didn't know any better. But here's the truth. Your boundaries didn't hurt them. They showed them. They made it clear how much they relied on you not being able to say no. They were never ready for you to wake up, get well, and stop playing their game. And now, with no emotional access, no control, and no way to respond to influence, they're starving. So they act like egos that are famished. They make up stories where you're the bad guy, and they're the victim. But deep inside, they know that your insight wasn't mean. It was fixing things. You stopped giving them something they didn't deserve, which hurt their feelings of entitlement. You didn't get cold. You woke up. And for those who've depended on your unconscious self to make them feel better about themselves, that's a really scary threat. It wasn't your restrictions that were the problem. What they did to them was bad. And your rehabilitation eventually came to an end at number. You never asked to be better. You just had the guts to go first. You never went out of your way to be different. You didn't sign up to be better than everyone else. To be honest, all you really wanted was peace, safety, and some clarity. But life didn't make things easy for you. It provided you an opportunity to take a rest. And instead of running away from it as most people do, you leaned in. You let it destroy all of your goals and ambitions. You learn to see yourself this way. You let it get to you. Not because you relished the pain, but because you knew that the only way out was through it. Most people will do everything to avoid reaching their breaking point. They distract, deny, project, and provide medicine. But you are in front of the flames. You didn't make it go numb. You let it catch fire. You let the silence scream. You let the melancholy take over your life. And it's not because you're a hero. You were tired of pretending to be. I'm tired of smiling even if it hurts. I'm tired of hiding behind masks. I'm tired of saying I'm okay. When your soul was screaming. So you let the breakdown happen. That decision changed everything. Because what seemed like weakness was actually your time to be a fighter. You learned from hitting rock bottom. You removed all of your phony names. You asked about everything. The dark showed you the contrast between who you were instructed to be and who you truly are. That is where your light came from. Not because you want to be better than everyone else, but because you are more real than you've ever been. People might see your strength, clarity, and sparkle today and assume you've always had them. They don't know it was created at night. They don't know where it came from. You prayed to God to end the pain. They don't know that you obtained your strength when you thought you had nothing left. You aren't better. You are more brave. They were bolder than the others who stayed on the surface. You were braver than the ones who made fun of you when you were getting well. Because you let yourself fall apart in a world that punishes vulnerability. No, you never asked to become better. You just need to stop behaving. You learned from the terrible times. And now your light harms those who are still afraid of the dark. You have already won. Number. You weren't come here to be adored originally. You were placed here so that others would misunderstand you initially. You weren't come here to get compliments straight immediately. You were sent to shake things up, get people talking, and make them think about the rules that make them feel comfortable. Because of that, people were always going to feel uncomfortable around you before they were ever appreciative. You weren't sent to be admired. First, you were sent to be misunderstood. It's a component of the job. They couldn't quite figure you out. The one they made fun of, disregarded, or let go of. They claimed you were too quiet, too serious, too sensitive, and too weird. Anything that will make you less free and simpler to deal with. But what they really meant was that you don't fit the roles we generally play. You were too honest, too often, and your perspective was too wide for the situation. You weren't just different. You were set apart by God. And because of that, you were alone early on. Not because you were doing anything terrible, but because your soul couldn't connect with things that were superficial. You sought to blend in, connect, and make yourself less visible so you might feel normal. But it never worked. Because deep down, you weren't designed to fit in. You were sent to shake things up. But you had to go alone first before you could lead anybody else out. Being by yourself wasn't a punishment. It was protecting it. What seemed like rejection was actually protection against those who weren't ready to accept you. God didn't hide you because you weren't ready yet. He shielded you because they weren't. Your solitude was never about being behind. It was about keeping safe until the proper time arrived. Until the platform could handle your truth. Until the area was created to contain your voice. Until the throng could hear your frequency. When you are picked, there is never any applause. It all starts with being left behind. Heaven has a plan, that's why. Before they are crowned, the chilly ones are sent away. The ones who are assigned to carry fire always go through it first. So if they got it incorrect, you lied to them or fled, don't worry. That's your evidence. You weren't sent to be the first one noticed. You were sent to become until everything that is meant for you matches up not with the version they wished, but with the truth you have always known. So here you are, the chosen one, still standing, still sparkling, and still growing despite being misunderstood, misjudged, abused, and misnamed. You've been called everything except the truth. People have made fun of you for being silent and then punished you for speaking out. You have outgrown friendships, families, belief systems, and even entire timelines that try to hold you in. You didn't just get through it, you changed through it all. You were never supposed to fit in. You were supposed to filter, shake up shaky foundations, disrupt what was fake, and bear a truth so raw and terrible that others would rather send you away than develop with you. And yet, even when they weren't there, you never lost who you were, even when others questioned you. You didn't quit being able to tell. You didn't let getting rejected down make you tough. You let it make you better. They said you were too deep. You proved that they were too shallow. They told me you were hard to work with. You proved that they just weren't ready. They try to make you feel horrible about waking up. You made it your anointing. By now, you know that to ascend, you have to separate. Not because you're better than everyone else, but because you can manage problems that not everyone can. Your route needs to be distinct. Your lessons needed to be more intense. Your light had to shine through the gloom and your presence. It has to be gained via quiet, alone time, and holy sorrow. But things are getting better. The dates are drawing closer. What used to set you apart from others now makes you a model. They used to deny the truth, but now they are sprinting toward it. And while they were busy spreading rumors, you were busy setting things right. Don't feel regretful about getting turned down. Don't be furious about being alone. That was the cocoon. That was the womb. That was the sacred spot where God kept you safe, healed you, and gave you the keys to a life that no one can take or damage. So go ahead and walk with confidence. Not as someone who needs to explain, prove, or convince, but as someone who recognizes you weren't just selected. You were formed, and everything you lost. The proof was everything that broke and left. They didn't bury you. They inadvertently planted you. And this bloom was never designed to remain quiet. If this message touched you, please like, comment, and share it with another chosen one who is going through the same divine purifying. Don't forget to hit the bell and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss another blistering clip or soul awakening truth. This is more than simply content. This is evidence. Remain distinct, remain grounded, and stay chosen. If this message hit you as truth often does, hard, raw, and difficult to deny, don't just sit there with it. Go with it. Sign up for this channel. This forum is for souls like yours, really refined and rising, who are weary of superficial conversation and want to walk in profound spiritual truth. Leave a note here to let everyone know you're not broken. You're becoming. Your story is strong, and your voice is part of a spiritual revolution. Give this video a thumbs up. Let that like be your agreement with a higher version of you if it affirms something you already knew but needed to hear out loud. Give this to someone who has also been turned down, misunderstood, and misjudged, and who is about to discover that they were selected for a higher cause. This isn't merely a channel. It's a soul tribe, a safe haven for individuals who are different. And your membership is more than simply a follow. It's a statement. I know who I am now. You didn't get here by chance. You were taken here. So stay in contact. Be cautious and keep moving ahead. Because of this is just the beginning. May God bless you.